Hello and welcome back to everyone that's tuned in to the American Ultra Stock Show. Thank you so much for being here. Today we're going to be talking about a video that you guys always love this topic. It's dual nationals and essentially why we are losing dual nationals. So just to give you guys a brief structure of how the video will go, we'll start with the names that we have already lost, and then the names that we might be losing that are really important, as you guys could see on the thumbnail, and then player and how relevant this is, and finally get to the point on why this is happening. Braden, if you want to introduce to us the big names, well, we saw Esmir left to Bosnia. He has already debuted, did really well on that window as well. So what do you think?
Yeah, well, I don't think Esmir technically is gone because you do have to play 3 games. But, I mean, let's be realistic. We've known he's been gone for a while. And this call-up, and especially the assist on his debut for Bosnia, which was a great assist, by the way. Complete props to him. I'm happy for him. But it's basically all done and sealed. Esmir is gone. And he just adds to the recent list of, I think, maybe not necessarily high-profile names, but slept-on names that really could have helped us out in hindsight. Amir Richardson, for one, the Moroccan whose dad was an American who played in the NBA, Michael Ray Richardson, for any basketball fans. And yeah, he chose Morocco because, I mean, he said he identified with that. His mother made a strong push. Obviously, she's Moroccan. He's obviously a huge midfielder that would have added to our pool. Now playing for Fiorentina. We saw him beat us 4-0 in the Olympics, which was a little bit of a revenge game. For another one, Zion Suzuki, who we could have played in the Olympics, but he didn't end up making the team. We played Japan right before the Olympics, and he wasn't there. But he's now starting with Japan's senior team. The goalkeeper just made a move as well to Serie A, to Parma, and he looks all right. I mean, it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but when you consider our goalkeeper situation, I think he definitely would have been at least in the mix. And I mean, for a starter in Serie A, that's about 2 divisions higher than any other of our players who are starting. So I think he definitely would have been a key part. And then another one who I think I was the first to identify last year, Tyler Bindon, playing for Reading. It's a little bit of a lower profile one, but a center back / right back for Reading in League One, plays for New Zealand now, actually did come up against us in the Olympics. And I think down the line, he's going to be a really big loss. But these are just some of the big names that we've already lost. There's going to be more that we're probably going to lose. And it's a bit of a new thing now that we seem to always win our dual national battles.
Yeah, as we rise to prominence and we start to have these squads that we think we have a lot more depth, which I think we do, and I think that the floor of talent has definitely risen in the recent years. Maybe, well, there are a few reasons, but maybe these other nations might be more attractive. But anyways, we'll dive into the reason why we're losing them later on in the video. Let's talk about now the guys that, we lost these guys that I think 2 of them, especially Esmir and Emir Richardson, would have been really huge parts of the program. And even the other 2 were still a bit unproven positions that we were in dire need. But now we are in the brink, I think, honestly, in the brink of losing Luka Koleosho. Huge name. I think he would instantly make us better. We had a video with TAC a while back. If you haven't watched, make sure to check it out. And we all listed him as S tier. We have Luka Koleosho. We have Diego Luna, who was snubbed from the Olympics, and then came out with to the press saying that, hey, he's not turning down closing any doors, turning down any offers if Mexico were to call him up. We have the emergence of Richie Ledesma. So now maybe he doesn't have a Mexican passport yet, but he said it recently that he wouldn't turn it down either. And there's Brian Gutierrez as well, who has been criminally underrated, I think, for our program. Now, these are some guys that we might be on the brink of losing. What do you think, Brandon? How big of a loss do you think they would be, if you want to expand on it? And also, any other names that you think we could throw out there that we might be losing? And what's the likelihood that we lose all of these players that we mentioned?
I mean, all of them are unique, but I'll add one more name on there that kind of fits the theme of most of the other players you mentioned, Jonathan Gomez. And the theme here is Mexican Americans, because I think there's kind of 2 sides to this. For one, there could be some aspect of USSF maybe underrating them a little bit. I think in specific cases, certainly for Diego Luna, maybe Gutierrez as well. You could even say Ledesma. I think he's been a little bit overhyped this past season, again, due to some performances against average teams. But when he was at the peak of his form, he still wasn't called up over Marlon Fossey, who's also a little bit unproven. I'm not saying that was a bad thing necessarily. It's just the reality of the situation is that he wasn't taken a look at, and that's probably why he's trying to get his Mexican passport now, so to have another option. So I kind of just think that Mexico provides another more realistic route to senior international football for these players. I mean, we already saw players like David Ochoa make this switch in the past. Julian Araujo was playing well in La Liga last season. He was all right, made the move to the Premier League. He's now with Bournemouth. He's definitely one that I think maybe could have even gotten the call-up because over Marlon Fossey. He's playing at a higher level. A big loss. Maybe Mexico have been underrating him as well because he wasn't in their Copa America squad. There could be a little bit of anti-American bias there, just like I mentioned. USSF might have a little bit of anti-Mexican bias. It goes both ways, which is a really unfortunate situation for these players. But I think the main reason, especially when you talk about these guys, I think there's, two main reasons, and we'll get to them. But one, I'll just say now, I think for a lot of these players, and especially when you mentioned Esmir Bajraktarovic as well for Bosnia and Tyler Bindon for New Zealand, I think we're finally to the point where some of our dual nationals, their other nationalities, are worse, at least from a national team perspective, than the U.S. In the past, it's all been nations that are better than us, like Serginho Dest with the Netherlands, Balogun, Musa, countless others with England, and so many other more examples. Now we're finally at the point where some of our players have other nationalities that are worse and therefore easier to break into the national teams too. So obviously everyone wants to play for their country. Everyone has the dreams of playing at a Euros, a Copa America, a World Cup, whatever the nationality may be, the tournament there. We had a player named Mansour Orotagba who was a dual national with Togo recently. They just switched to them, playing in the second tier in Germany. Another one that's going under the radar, playing maybe at the AFCON, could be a dream for him. And it's just more realistic than a USMNT call-up now. And I think this is kind of the reality that we're going to have to accept. I think also our scouts probably need to do a little bit better of a job recruiting. But now these players, they have more realistic, better options, whereas the U.S. was the plan B for a lot of them. And that's kind of where we got a lot of our players from. Now the U.S. would be the plan A, but these other nations represent a more realistic plan B.
Yeah, I think with the exception of Luka, if anyone wants to go PC and say that we call them worse, it's just a clearer path to the main squad. Let's be honest. Esmir immediately got called up. I don't think that would be the case with the U.S. But I think that I completely agree with you. I think that, and also for some of these names, there is maybe that anti-Mexican bias, but also for Esmir, for Tyler Bindon, I don't think our scouts really value these dual nationals that are shared with lesser known profiles of nations, as opposed to an English-American dual nat. Diego Luna, as we said, if his name was Diego da Silva and he was a half Brazilian player, I legitimately think he would have gotten better opportunities than he did as Diego Luna. And Brian Gutierrez, if he was perhaps half German, I think that he would have gotten more opportunities. So maybe that's my take. I really think it's one of the reasons. But as we move along right here to the reasons why we're losing them, we mentioned the big ones for all these guys. But the highest profile player out of this crop, and I think arguably the one that would have the most immediate impact, at least for us, would be Luka Koleosho. We've talked about our wing depth, how we need more options there, someone to emerge and really be another influx output as opposed to Pulisic on the other side. And having him, I think, would be a great thing. However, I have some harsh opinions on this one. Why do you think we might lose Luka Koleosho? What do you think about the situation?
Yeah, I think the Luka Koleosho one is kind of similar to the two other players that we mentioned in the intro, Amir Richardson and Zion Suzuki, in the fact that not only is there other nationality that, we lost Richardson to, we lost Suzuki to with Morocco and Japan, and we might lose Koleosho to with Italy. They're better. They have a better national team, harder to break into, granted, but a better national team setup, more realistic chance at going far in a tournament. There's also the culture and the identity. I think that if you look at these nations and particularly their football, they have a lot more of an identity, especially when, you consider we had Greg Berhalter for 6 years. He didn't really do well to install a winning culture in the team, boring tactics that didn't work. Now, maybe with Mauricio Pochettino, we can do better, but I think we kind of have to build that up over time. And some of it is kind of just that process. It's unavoidable. Over time, we're going to have more history as a footballing nation, more culture, but I think the reality now is that Italy is so much more appealing to play for, even for someone like Luka Koleosho, who I think we've both been very vocal in the past that he has no Italian connection. Let's be honest. Yes, he has a passport, but I think his parents basically just wanted to get all of his passports out there so he had all the opportunities. And for now, Italy are content with calling him out to their U21s, not even having him in the matchday squad, just there for vibes, really, and I guess some training sessions once or twice a month. So he's going to continue to take that option because it represents the best nationality for him to play at. If he ever makes it there at a senior level, Italy's going to give him more chances to win a World Cup. And it's just as simple as that. Even though he has no connection there, I think that's something that our recruiters probably need to do a little bit better of a job at, is pushing the American identity. Because you can argue for Richardson and Suzuki, and I think another one that we are probably guaranteed to lose that is going to be a very big loss is Henry Chase, the other Japanese American, like Zion Suzuki. I think we need to push that American thing, because for some of them, maybe you could argue they already don't really feel the connection to the USA. But for Luka Kolyosho, I think it's very evident by just everything about him, really, that he is more American than anything else. And I feel like we just haven't been exploiting that. And some of that is scouting them from the lower levels as well. I think if our youth national teams did a better job of bringing in these guys, I mean, we're doing a little bit better now as of late. But if we had done this 4 or 5 years ago, maybe these situations could have been avoided.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that with Luka, the biggest thing for me is I know that maybe our scouts need to push that brand. I mean, the guy is posting LeBron at the Olympics with the American flag. He watches basketball. He said that his favorite snack is peanut butter and jelly. I mean, that's as American as you can get, really. And I, as we said, doesn't really have many ties with Italy. But then again, I think here comes the individual aspect of it and how he's at fault. If we have to convince a guy and beg a guy that was born and raised in Connecticut to play for the U.S. over U.S. main national team, it's not even the youth level or the main roster, as opposed to sitting on the bench for Italy's U21s, where even the Italian directors are out saying that, not blatantly putting him on the spot, but saying that they need to have players that resemble the society and that keep the Italian identity. Things that, honestly, as we know, Italy has a problem with accepting foreigners altogether, especially let alone playing for the national team. At times, they have singled out Jorginho, they have singled out Camoranesi, a guy that won the World Cup for them and is Argentine-born. And I think that Luka maybe is not looking at things in the big picture, how the place where he belongs, I'm not just campaigning for it. I think that he really belongs to the U.S. And if we have to beg and convince him to do that, at that point, I'm not entirely sure I would even want to see a player that is honestly treating us as a second option. I don't know if you agree with me on that one.
Well, I think that's one of our biggest selling points, right? I mean, we are notoriously the melting pot country. And that's why we have so many dual nationals, that we can make so many videos on these topics over and over again, because new players emerge out of nowhere. It seems like every week in the youth levels and the senior levels, all over the world, in every continent, every country, every league, we have these players who have multiple nationalities. Some of them, like we've been saying, are more American than others. Some were just born here to foreign parents. Some were born here to American parents and then moved abroad and then got their other citizenships. Some were born abroad to American parents. There's so many different situations, and I think the fact that we're so welcoming to everyone is just, I mean, as a country, it's how you should be. And for a national team as well, it's so beneficial because it's allowed us to benefit from, basically, I'm going to compare it to one of the most American things, college football. The transfer portal is basically what this is. And it's something that other nationalities, maybe you can argue France a little bit, maybe England, but for the most part, other national teams don't have this luxury of being able to recruit other players from basically everywhere to come play for us because they have that connection. And I think that's something that we need to take more of an advantage of from a recruiting aspect. It just show players how welcoming the country is, how great it is to be American on and off the pitch. And if some of these players hear these pitches, maybe they'll be more convinced to play for us.
Yeah, especially on the professional standpoint, because if that's what's luring Luka to play there, the ability to play for a better national team that has the better chances of reaching, going far and deep into tournaments, even though recently they haven't done that. On the other hand, you can make history with the U.S., the place that you were born, the place that you were clearly more identified with. It's what would you rather be, a legend at a mid-table club or someone else that spent a season with a big club? You can also go that route as well. But as we said, we have a lot of dual nationals that we could cover. Let us know, guys, in the comments below as we come to the end of this video. Any names that you haven't heard, more names if you haven't heard them. You can't really recommend us to talk about them. But if you'd like to hear more about these dual nationals that go under the radar, we would like to think that we have them in our scope more than most people. So please let us know. Let us know what you think think will happen? Will we lose these players? Do you think we'll keep out of the ones that we've mentioned? Do you think we will lose them? How big of a loss do you think it would be? And do you agree with my take that if we need to bag Luke at that point, let him go? So let us know. A lot of topics to cover. Dual nationals are always fun to talk about. Make sure to give us a like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you next time.